I'm about to seriously challenge everything you know about sunlight. Because the truth is, current health messaging around sun exposure is not only wrong, it is actually making us sick. One of the largest studies on sun exposure found that avoiding sunlight increases your risk of death as much as smoking. In other words, the risk of staying out of the sun was comparable to one of the most well-established health hazards known to medicine. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how we got this so wrong and share with you 10 practical tips for how to reclaim sunlight as one of the most powerful healing forces in your life. For decades, public health campaigns have drilled a single message into our minds. Avoid the sun, wear SPF, any exposure is dangerous. And it has worked. Sunlight is now viewed more as a carcinogen than a nutrient. Turns out, the science never fully backed that claim to begin with. We just never questioned it. And now, study after study is painting a very different picture than the one we were sold. That is why, after decades of one-sided messaging, government officials across countries are taking back their safety adverts. Here's a wild thought. Maybe sunlight was never the problem. Maybe the problem was that we stopped letting it in. Let's back up for a moment. What actually is sunlight and why is it so crucial? You see, sunlight isn't just light, it's a spectrum, one that has been shaping human physiology for millions of years. Each wavelength triggers a unique cascade of changes within us that no pill or light bulb could ever replicate. Let's start with the one that gives sunlight its bad rep. UVB is the shortest and most energetic wavelength that reaches the Earth's surface. UVB is what causes sunburn, but it's also the only kind of light that triggers vitamin D synthesis in the skin. UVA, on the other hand, is known as the ager. It is present all day, all year, even through clouds and even through glass. UVA doesn't directly hit DNA like UVB does, and it also doesn't cause sunburn, but it does contribute to skin aging through generating unstable molecules that damage our elastin and collagen fibers. But UVA has another side that you rarely hear about. UVA is the primary wavelength that triggers something called nitric oxide from our skin, which is this magical compound that lowers your blood pressure, improves blood flow, and supports cardiovascular health. Because of the media narrative, we often reduce sunlight solely to its UV risks, but the majority of sunlight isn't UV at all. In fact, over 40% of sunlight is actually infrared light, invisible but definitely not irrelevant. It penetrates deep into our tissues, deeper than any other wavelength, all the way into your mitochondria. There, it stimulates energy production, reduces inflammation, and speeds up repair. This is the foundation for what we now call red light therapy. So why is it that we've been told to avoid the sun? And is this advice actually based on science? When we think about sun exposure, we think about skin cancer. Melanoma is probably the first thing that pops into your head. Makes sense, it's the skin cancer that everyone fears. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Melanoma isn't strongly linked to total sun exposure. In fact, studies have shown that indoor office workers have a higher risk of developing melanoma than outdoor workers who get far more cumulative sun exposure. Even weirder, melanoma often appears on areas that rarely see the sun, like the soles of the feet, underarms, inner thighs, and so on. So what gives? It turns out infrequent but intense sun exposure, like getting burnt on vacation after months indoors, is far more dangerous than regular moderate exposure that allows your skin to adapt. What the health agencies don't mention is that our bodies have tools to deal with UV stress, and that even after sensible sun damage, the net effect of sun exposure is a positive one. Here's how. When UVB creates lesions in your DNA, your body activates these powerful repair systems. With regular exposure, these defenses get stronger and more efficient. This adaptive response is called photoadaptation. Think of it like exercise. Too little and your body weakens. Too much and you get hurt. But when done wisely, it builds resilience. Remember, we evolved under the sun. It would be silly of us not to have built-in mechanism to handle chronic UV exposure. Your skin adapts, it thickens, it tans, it ramps up protective enzymes, it becomes better at handling future exposures, just like your muscles grow stronger with consistent movement. The problem is when the damage exceeds your ability to repair it, like during burns or after long periods of no sun followed by intense exposure. So yes, UV light can damage DNA, but it also activates the very systems that repair it. That's the paradox. It's not the sunlight itself that's dangerous, it's the burns, it's overexposure on unadapted skin. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if we continue to fear all sun exposure, we might be severely increasing our chances of death. A landmark study out of Sweden tracked nearly 30,000 women over 20 years, grouping them into low, moderate, and high sun exposure groups. And what what they found was striking. Women who got the least sun had up to 60% higher risk of death and lived 1 to 2 years less than those with the most sun exposure. There was a clear trend across all groups. The more sun these women got, the longer they lived, and vice versa, even after adjusting for confounding factors associated with lifestyle. Avoiding the sun also creates a chronic vitamin D deficiency, so we go to the doctor and they prescribe us a vitamin D supplement. The problem is that vitamin D supplements are not the same thing as getting real light. Randomized controlled trials show no significant health benefits from supplementing vitamin D when it comes to cancer prevention, heart disease, cognition, or fracture risk, because sunlight does so much more than produce vitamin D. Sunlight has incredible whole body benefits like lowering your blood pressure via nitric oxide release, modulating your immune function, boosting your mood through the release of serotonin and endorphins, regulating your sleep and your circadian rhythm, and enhancing mitochondrial repair through red and near infrared light, like I mentioned. This is not a supplement that you can swallow. This is a full body recalibration. Well, you might be wondering then, how did we get this so backwards? For that, we have to look at incentives. The sun scare narrative isn't just about health. It's about money. The sunscreen industry, which now represents a multi-billion-dollar global market, has had a vested interest in promoting year-round usage regardless of context or individual risk. In the US alone, the sun care market brings in $2 billion a year. Globally, it's projected to top $20 billion. This has, of course, contributed to an oversimplified public health message that all sunlight is dangerous and that sunscreen is universally protective. But contrary to that sunscreen narrative, research actually shows the opposite. Over-reliance on SPF leads to more burns, not fewer. Here's how that works. When unprotected skin is exposed to sunlight, your body senses this light and activates protective mechanisms like melanin production, antioxidant defenses, and DNA repair pathways. But when you apply SPF, you block the very signal that triggers those internal defenses. At first, the sunscreen protects you, but it has a time limit. Most chemical filters break down after just 1.5 to 2 hours of sun exposure, and even quicker if sweat or water is involved. When that SPF finally wears off, your skin is now suddenly exposed to intense UV radiation without the internal adaptation. This creates a dangerous window where burns can happen much faster and much more severely because the skin is unprepared to handle UV stress. This is what the researchers refer to as the sunscreen paradox. People feel safe, so they stay out longer, they keep reapplying, and end up with more damage than if they'd let their skin adapt. But dig deeper and things get even more murky. Turns out that the chemicals that are in those very sunscreens might cause some serious issues of their own. A 2019 FDA study found that 6 common ingredients absorb into the bloodstream at levels far above the agency's own safety thresholds. Some of these filters have been linked to hormonal disruption, carcinogenic byproducts, potential neurotoxicity, and serious harm to coral reefs and marine life. With spray-on sunscreens bypassing your body's usual filters, delivering these chemical particles directly into your lungs. So how do we do this right then? How do we move away from the chemical sunscreens and get back to a wiser and better relationship with sunlight without the risk of burning? I'd love to share with you my 10 practices that you can start doing the next time you're in the sun for mitigating your risk while maximizing the benefits. Let's get into it. Number 1, make the UV index your best friend and get in the habit of checking it daily. If you don't know, the UV index is a standardized scale that indicates and forecasts the strength of UV radiation at your location, and it is measured numerically from UVI 0, which is minimal, to UVI 11+, extreme or severe. I personally never leave the house without checking the UV. The numbers I see for the day will determine how I dress, what I take with me, how I run my errands, how long I stay out, and if I go out at all. This has been the single best sun habit that has made me well adapted to sun exposure. Fun tip: if you don't have access to a UV index app, you can use the shadow rule as your rule of thumb. If your shadow is shorter than you, the UV is strong and it's best to get out of the sun. If it's taller than you, chances are the UV is much more forgiving. 2. Know your skin type. There is a wonderful resource that I can recommend called the Fitzpatrick Skin Type Test. It groups all skin varieties into 5 groups, depending on many different questions that you will answer. Depending on which group you fall under, you now have an approximate blueprint for how your skin reacts to the UV scale. So learn what each number means for your specific skin tone and tailor your exposure accordingly. 3. Build a base tan slowly. Melanin is your body's natural sunscreen. The darker your skin becomes, the better it is at handling sunlight. Aim for short, frequent exposures to unprotected sunlight during your safe windows, which you will determine based on your skin type. For example, I'm a type 4 on that scale and I can safely handle up to UV 5, so my safe window is from UV 0 to UV 5. Fun fact, just because the sun is out doesn't mean you're making vitamin D. UVB only becomes strong enough when UV index is around 3 or higher, ideally closer to 5, especially for darker skin tones. So while aiming to time your UV safe windows, don't be afraid of brisk exposures at the higher end of your limit if you want to get the most out of the sun. And remember, 10 to 20 minutes a day is far better than one big beach day a week. 4. Avoid burns at all costs. Learn to recognize your subtle cues your body gives you when it's had enough sun. Know your limit. The moment your skin starts to feel hot or pink, get out, cover up, and head to shade. And do not let yourself burn. Number 5. Respect the midday sun. This is when UVB is strongest. Technically the best window for vitamin D synthesis, but I personally would never recommend staying out in the sun during that time, because this is also the window for highest risk burn, especially if you have lighter skin. If you must be out at that time, use the next few practices to keep yourself protected. 6. Use clothes as your first line of defense. Light, breathable, natural fibers are much better sun protection than chemical sunscreen. Loose linen or cotton shirts are my only go-to for protecting my skin during peak UV hours. 7. Wear a hat. Always. The face, the neck, and the chest are the most sensitive areas for burns and photoaging. Not to mention, the head is a major point of heat regulation. No hat with direct sun exposure, especially in hot climates, equals faster core temperature rise. This greatly increases your chance of heat stroke, and trust me, it is not a pleasant thing. Number 8. Guard your eyes. UV can damage your eyes, but just like our skin, our eyes adapt. However, if you're wearing sunglasses without proper UV protection, you might be causing some serious eye damage. The dark lenses trick your eye into thinking that it's dark out. Your pupils dilate, letting in even more UV straight through the lens into your retina. So always make sure that the sunglasses you wear actually block 100% of UVA and UVB light, and do not buy sunglasses without this certification. You'd be surprised how many sunglasses on the market don't have this protection. 9. Upgrade your defense. If you require additional support or you know you'll be out in the sun during peak UV hours, you can supplement with astaxanthin. It is a great antioxidant specifically geared towards skin resilience. And 10. Only use mineral sunscreens. If you still insist on using sunscreen, the best switch you can make is to mineral sunscreens. The two main filters used in these sunscreens are zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. These filters actually work much better and keep stable much longer than their chemical counterparts. More and more brands are popping up, creating these awesome non-toxic natural alternatives, so it is easier now than ever to find something that really works for your skin. We've spent decades being told to fear the sun, but the science says otherwise. Sunlight properly used isn't a threat, it's a biological requirement, like air, food, and water. Yes, overexposure is dangerous, but underexposure is deadly too. Yes, it can damage cells, but it also stimulates their repair. Yes, it can increase cancer risk if misused, but it also lowers all-cause mortality when used wisely. Sunlight isn't the problem. The problem is how far we've drifted from knowing how to live under it. We evolved under the sun. Our biology expects it. To fear the sun entirely is to fear our own nature. So I think it's time we rethink the fear. Let the sun in wisely, learn its rhythms, and just see what changes you'll observe in your overall well-being, your mood, focus, and your vitality. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, maybe share it with someone who still thinks sunlight is the enemy. If you're interested in learning more and doing your own research, as always, I will leave studies and articles on this subject down in the description. And I hope to see you in my next video.